Welcome to this episode of the Word Unbound. The Word Unbound exists to help Christians be more biblically minded by answering common questions through the lens of Scripture. My name is Conrad Mills, and today I'm here with Will Sanderson.
How's it going, Conrad?
We're in for the long haul today, so it's a good day. And we're leaving the chair. We're coming back, and we're going to talk about the Trellis and the Vine.
Trellis and the Vine. Yeah, this book, right?
It's a book. We're not going to talk about
we're
the
not
book
doing we're not doing a
30
30-minute book review. No.
But stop real quick.
Yeah.
Okay. I got to make sure I think I did. Okay. You can edit that out, right?
We got to restart.
Oh, you can't. Oh, really?
Yeah.
You can't cut that out?
It's fine, dude. It was like 30 seconds. Just no. You can.
Oh, okay.
We just restart it. I'll just clip the front off.
Okay. Sorry, I just had to make sure because that would have been terrible.
No, it's all good.
Okay.
All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to this episode of the Word Unbound. The Word Unbound exists to help Christians be more biblically minded by answering common questions through the lens of Scripture. My name is Conrad Mills, and today I'm here with Will Sanderson.
How's it going, Conrad?
It's going great. We're here for the long haul today.
Yep.
We're excited that you're tuning in with us, and we're talking about the Trellis and the Vine.
A Trellis and the Vine. This book, right?
Yeah, a book we recommended.
It's true.
Well, I know. I think we both said if we had to take 5 books, something like that, to a deserted island, this would be one of them.
Probably not for me.
Oh, it wouldn't be? I thought you said it was one. If you only had like 3 or 4 ministry books, this would be one. of them.
Yeah, but no, it doesn't. I don't want to reread this.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well,
it's like if I'm only giving if someone comes up to me and says I want to know about ministry, I only have time to read 3 books. This would be one of them. Right.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So that's where I mean the reread value is kind of not as much.
Once you've read it, it's not something you need to read again.
Well, and we're not really talking about the book.
No, we're
talking about
the idea for this episode came from the book.
Exactly.
Kinda.
So we talk a lot about ministry, you and I. We hang out, we talk, and as we talk about it a lot, we go back to their analogy, right? The trellis and the vine.
Okay.
Which is it's an illustration, which is to say that you have in ministry you kind of have 2 things that you're working on. You have what's called the trellis work, and that's the administrative side of things, the emails, the structure to it all, where it's like, okay, we have this, and it meets on Tuesday nights. When you get there, it's going to look like that, and then these people are going to be in charge. Like that's the structure thing, right? That's the trellis work, and then you have the vine work, which is what grows on top of the trellis. And so you don't have structure for structure's sake. You have this thing so that it can grow, right? Some churches have beautiful trellises and nothing growing on them. Some people have vines everywhere, not a trellis to be found. It's just all going up the walls. And so you need
vine,
both.
you're talking about the spiritual growth of the people.
Spiritual growth.
Growth of the people.
Yeah.
In that are operating in that trellis, if you will.
Yeah. So the vine grows up the trellis, right?
Exactly.
So it's the structure that allows for effective ministry to happen. And then the vine is that effective ministry, whether that's sharing the gospel with unbelievers or whether that's growing in fruit and things like that.
Or that's sitting into the teaching of God's word.
Exactly. And all of that's going to bear fruit in your life. That's all going to grow the vine, right? And so that's the illustration. And that's what we're talking about today is just the idea of structures and vines and trellises and
another title for this episode I think could be just ministry. Because it's something every Christian should be involved in ministry. Yeah. And that's just kind of what we're talking about today. But I think the illustration for trellis, of the trellis and the vine, really works well for a title and in thinking about ministry too. I know when I read that book, you'd already taught me a lot of the stuff that was in there. And so I had already seen it, but seeing it written down in the way that these 2 men wrote it.
Very clear.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And so I kind of want to start off, can a trellis be too important?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, how so?
I mean, you can care too much about the trellis to where you're not worried about the vine. You're spending so much time working on admin stuff that you're not preparing a sermon. Yeah. Or you're spending so much time making sure that everything at this youth event is so awesome, but like you don't really do anything when they're there of any spiritual value, right? And youth maybe is a little bit tricky because I think there can be some events where you don't really do a whole lot, where it's just like, hey, it's a pool party. Yeah. And that I think that can be fine. But yeah, you can definitely focus too much on the trellis because I think by its very nature, it's going to take time, energy, and effort. And I think you can care way too much about it, and you can become so overly systematized, right? And I think actually you're an example of this, right? Where you came to our ministry and you didn't fit any of the systems that we were in, right? You didn't fit into the junior high and high school ministry. I was like, I don't really know that I want to put Conrad there. I didn't want to put you in men's ministry, which it was kind of becoming what it is now. And it was like, well, what do we do with this guy? Right? He doesn't fit the trellis that we currently have. What do we do with him? And how do we best shepherd this guy? How do we best steward this guy? Like, how do we do this? And for us, the answer was to start a college ministry, right? And so we tried that, right? Because you were like, hey, I have these connections at the school, and I have this connections with other people where it's like, hey, we can share the gospel to 38,000 unbelievers at this D1 campus that's near our church, right? And so it's like, instead of trying to shoehorn you into this trellis work, because we've worked so hard to build these trellises of men's ministry, women's ministry, children's ministry, youth ministry, instead of shoehorning you in there and viewing the trellis as more important than the person, saying, okay, no, let's run where Conrad's gifted, let's go where he needs to go, and let's build a trellis around this guy, right? And so that was kind of what we did. And I mean, things happen and whatever, but
God has other plans sometimes.
Exactly. And I think at the end of the day, but that is showing you that the trellis needs to come secondary to the people.
And in a lot of ways, you see a lot of different churches, and I don't think any church is ever exempt from this, but it's so easy to focus on the trellis work.
Yeah.
Because the trellis
it's so
work,
much easier to do.
because you can say, okay, I need to create this structure of what a week is going to look like for my men's ministry, for my small group ministry. And you can take, a month, 2 months, 3 months to, get all the leaders together, formulate the schedules, do the training that you need to do for it, schedule the training, give multiple options for the training. You can do all these different things. And it's so easy to look back on it and focus your time there, because you're like, okay, I set, this small group up for Tuesdays, this one up for Thursdays, this one up for Saturday, however that's just an example, and be like, man, I really did something for God here. I did something for the ministry and the equipping of the saints.
Yeah.
But in reality, all you did was create the trellis.
Yeah.
Because the vine and the spiritual growth, if you say you get all these leaders, but none of them can teach at all.
Right. Right.
Well, what are you really doing there?
Yeah.
And part of a trellis, if you just give, I'm just giving an example. If you just give questions for small group leaders to ask, I'm not saying that's a bad thing to do, but if that's all you're doing, along with setting up different, small groups to go to and different things like that, is there any vine work on the leader's part that's happening there? Is there any teaching? Is it what's really going on? So you can, it's way easier to focus on that, because you can check off boxes. You can say, I did this, I did that.
Yeah. But I do want to say that, and I tell you this all the time, that's not to say that God's not glorified in spreadsheets.
Oh, I love that stuff. So I'm not saying that at all. It's just, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying it's
like God can get glory in the admin, but we can get so consumed that we lose focus on what actually matters.
Well, the trellis is there to serve to allow the vine to grow.
Exactly. So you need both, right? But and just like you can be over focused on the vine work where you're so focused on people, but they have no structure.
Yeah.
They don't know what's going to happen when they walk in there. You're planning all this different discipleship. You've got all these different small groups, but they don't even know what time it starts, or if it's going to start, or who's even leading this thing, because you don't really so you need structure, right? And all those things are good. And I think every church and every pastor, for that matter, is going to have a different strengths and weaknesses, but more than that, even just their own convictions and style. You're going to have some pastors that are very regimented. We're going to meet for 6 weeks, and we're going to go through this book, and I want you to have this chapter read by this week and this chapter read by that week. Then you're going to have some who are like, yeah, man, let's just hang out. Thursdays, let's do it. Thursdays, let's get coffee, let's talk, and you bring to me your life stuff, I'll confess to you my life stuff, and let's just live life together. And I don't think either of those are inherently one's inherently better than the other. It depends on the guy, right?
Well, it also depends on the context.
It does.
That's a big thing with that. What context are you in? What kind of church? What, because I'm not sure how well that would work in a church of 800 people.
Right. Because then that guy is, if that guy is sitting there saying like, okay, I'm going to do that with 15 different people, that's going to take a lot of time. Right?
Well, and people, we're creatures of habit, right? So we do like some repetition in everything we do, but even especially in the church. I mean, you want to be as effective as you possibly can be, and the way that happens is by building a trellis that allows for that vine to grow within that certain system that you've created.
But there's a difference between trellis and vine ministry and conveyor belt ministry. You know, we talk about conveyor belt ministry all the time, where it's just like, oh, you're this age or you're this demographic, boop, you go right onto this, and then you're on the conveyor belt. And then you get married, and then you move to the next thing, and then you have kids, and you move to that next thing, and then you do this and that, and you're just on this conveyor belt where it's just like, I'm going to, it's paint by numbers. Let me just fill you in. Okay, you're single, 22, out of college, you go to this, and now your spiritual maturity is supposed to look like this. So you're gonna show up, and you're gonna have written this thing out, or read this, or gone over that, and that's all it is, right? And it's super, you don't know your elders. You haven't talked to them ever before. Like, you don't have any relationship with any of them, any of your leaders, or any of that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, you're 5-10 years down the road, and you realize that nothing's been personalized, nothing's been intimate. Everything has just been paint by numbers.
You're just a number.
And again, that's not to say, because it sounds like we're mad at big churches when we say this, and that's not the case, right? I mean,
no, there are big churches that do ministry extremely well, and then there are big churches that do it extremely poorly.
Exactly. And I mean, I used to go to a church of 4,000 members, about 7,000 on a given Sunday, and it was intimate still. Well, it was personalized still, and I knew my elders still.
So with the
not
the difference,
all of them,
well, you can't. But with the trellis and the difference between the trellis and the conveyor belt is the trellis can be, you think about a conveyor belt. It's not really easy to get a new one. Yeah. It's something it's a big overhaul that has to happen. But with a trellis can be moved, shifted in different ways. And so with the trellis, what you do is you're building it. I'm shepherding these people. What is the structure that would best serve them to allow the vines in their lives to grow? But with a conveyor belt, and with it's just, you're this age, you are this, you are single, you're married, you are dating, whatever it is, and then you're going to go do this, and then you're going to do that. It's just impersonal. Ministry is about people. Ministry is about seeing people grow.
And again, not to make too much of illustrations and analogies, but I think that they're helpful.
Yeah.
When you're talking about a trellis and a vine, the trellis is a structure, and the vine can grow outward. Where it's like, oh man, these people have these different gifts, and it's like, oh man, this guy has such a heart for people in prison. Okay, prison ministry, cool. He's got the giftedness, he's got the skills, and the trellis can and the vine
can add on to that.
It can go that way, and it can even be there if you're talking like a big macro structure of your ecclesiology. It can go that direction because you have this understanding that you're shepherding people, as opposed to the conveyor belt. Instead of it growing and it branching outward, the conveyor belt is, we want this product, and this is what you're supposed to look like when you're done, and this is what and there is you're done. Okay, so you've done this. You're in the college ministry. Okay, you're done with college ministry. This is what you're supposed to look like. Okay, now you're supposed to get married now. Okay, well, you didn't, so that means you fell off the conveyor belt. Now we put you with Misfit Toys, the singles, right? And we throw you over there into singles ministry, and you're over there, or you decide to hop onto a different conveyor belt, and you're serving in youth, right? Those are your two options.
Where you're getting sent overseas and you're not ready to,
right? But so all that to say, like, even the analogy and the illustrations can show you that there is there's a difference there, right?
Well, there's a right way to do ministry and a wrong way to do ministry.
Yeah.
I mean, I would argue, in American evangelicalism today, just speaking to our country, that's what we're familiar with.
True.
Ministry's done very poorly. Most in the large scale. If you're just going to take the average church or churches, I mean, it's not done that well, because it's not done with how can I build structures that allow people to grow, that don't inhibit growth.
Yeah, it's more about, okay, who's our target audience? Okay, now how do we reach that target audience? What worldly principles can we apply to this? And again, I'm not against godly pragmatism. I've had Chick-fil-A at a Bible study before.
Sinner.
But all that is to say, though, that you need to look at ministry as people and as these structures, and you can't overfocus. And you also you need to know where your strength and If you're pursuing ministry, you need to know where your strengths and your weaknesses lie. I mean, this is why I think you and I have gotten along so well, is because I think we complement each other a lot. I think you're very strong in the trellis part of things, and I think I'm stronger in the vine things, and I think we go well together in that way.
Yeah, and I think too, I mean, different people have different giftednesses too.
Totally.
You know, I mean, that's about as obvious can be, right?
I mean, you know, Peter said, or Paul, well, I think both say that, but I
yeah,
mean, you know, and that's the thing is like you're walking through that, and it's like, yeah, it's the body, right?
Yeah.
And the body's going to have a ton of different gifts and giftedness, and you're encouraging one another, you're challenging one another. You look at the plurality of elders. I think even just about our elder board, we have different guys that are gifted in different capacities, right? I mean, all of our elders are able to teach, right? That is a biblical qualification. But there are some. I mean, I'm thinking of one who like he would love to do the sit down conversational style. You ask him to preach, he's like, I want to be like sixth string preacher at this church. Like, you know, it's not that he can't, it's just that's not where he enjoys it, right? But doesn't mean he's not able to teach. Then you have other guys who are like, I will preach anywhere, anytime. I mean, you like, But all that saying, like, I mean, guys are gonna have different giftedness and different strengths, and it's your job as the shepherd to make sure that you're putting those people in the right places and things like that, and that you're shepherding those gifts, bolstering the weaknesses, encouraging the strengths, and taking care of that, you know.
So help me think. So say I'm a 35-year-old, 25-year-old, just a person. Let's be real simple, just a person, and I feel like I don't, by the way, but I feel like I'm in a conveyor belt ministry.
Yeah.
What would you say to that person?
I'd say look around, make sure that you are.
Okay. What are some distinguishing? I know we've kind of already talked about it, but what are some distinguishing? Just I see this. I'm in a conveyor belt ministry. And by the way, we would disagree with the conveyor belt ministry style because we don't think that's being shepherded to the best you possibly can be.
Yeah, I think it's paint by numbers ministry.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's what the Bible teaches.
No.
To look around, I think ask yourself, am I allowed to change ministries? Like, am I allowed to go to a Bible study without people my age? Like, can I go to the adult one? Or would I get, if I'm 25, I'm just a person. What if I showed up at one that has mostly married people? Would I get in trouble? Would I feel uncomfortable? Would I feel kicked out? Can I go to a Bible study that has people with gray hair in it? If I'm just 25, you didn't say if I'm married, you don't say if I have a job, you don't say if I'm getting my master's, none of that. If I'm just 25 years old and that's my identifier, then you might have an issue. Again, but it's really hard because like there's so many things that like a good solid church would be like, and that's where it's kind of hard to say like what are some identifiers, because like it's one of those things that there's so many questions that you have to ask.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
Because there's so many solid churches that might look like conveyor belt ministry just because they have really good systems in place, right? Like you may go through, okay, what does it take to be a member here? Well, you have to do this. Everyone does this. Every single, like, and it looks like doing this on Sunday afternoon and filling out this thing and talking to this person. Like, that's not conveyor belt ministry. That's just good systems for membership. Yeah. And so I don't want to put too many constraints on it. But like, I think if you're asking yourself, can I explore, right? Can I go to, like for example, I think of like my old church, Grace, right? They have all these different fellowship groups. If I were to go to, if I was 25 years old and instead of going to high school ministry, I went to Sojourners, like, or I went to Joint Heirs, or I went to Dula, Anchored, I think is what it's called now. If I went to those, right, would I be welcomed? Would I feel comfortable? And the answer there is absolutely. I used to do that sometimes, you know. I used to, take first service and just explore, just see the church, listen to some other preachers or whatever, and just, especially if, John was out of town, I was like, let's go see what this place is all about. I have buddies that go to this fellowship group. Yeah. Let's just see it. And so if you're looking at your church and saying, I don't want to be a part of the college ministry, I want to go to this adult ministry instead, are you allowed? If you're not allowed, then you might be in a conveyor belt kind of thing where it's like, you need to look like this. If you're going to be at this church, it looks like this. Because that's not really, now that's not to say that you're going to be shepherded well there, because they're going to be, if they're dealing with adult things, they're more worried about, how do you deal with your marriage now that your kids are out of the house. So you might not feel that the sermons and applications and all that other stuff may not apply to you much, but are you allowed to go there? Would you be welcome there if you did go? I think that would be a good question. Now, again, you don't want to be weird where it's like, we're this married couple, we want to go to the singles ministry. It was like, okay, that's a little weird. Or like you're this single guy and you're like, I want to go to the young marrieds one. Like, would you be welcome? Because, I think you should be welcomed there. I think it's a little weird. But if you're sitting there saying, I need to learn about marriage because clearly something is wrong, right? Then, I think it should be at least allowed.
And any church that resembles biblical fellowship, you should be welcome no matter where you go.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you're not, I'm not saying your church does not resemble biblical fellowship, because no church is perfect.
Yeah.
But just ask yourself those questions. Are you welcomed in different places? Because I think those are helpful questions to ask. And I mean, you see, when you have the view as someone who's thinking about going into ministry, or as someone who is in ministry, or wherever you are, the ministry is about people.
Yeah.
And if it's not about people and it's just about administration and a system and a business type mentality of how many people can we get, what do our finances look like, how many people are in that small group or this small group, or doing this ministry or that ministry, if that's the thought process, that's not biblical.
Rough. Yeah.
It's just not biblical.
Yeah,
you can't.
And the other thing too, I think one other thing that I would add. So again, I think there's so many questions. I think you could even ask that question: would I be comfortable, or would I be welcomed, or even allowed to go somewhere else? You may even still be at a church that's not conveyor belt and have that.
Yeah, that might have been a bad question.
But the other thing too is, like, if you're sitting there saying, does my discipleship look like everybody else's? Like, it's the same stock questions that are asked whenever this guy does accountability with anyone, and he's reading the same book with everybody, or he has read it with somebody. He's only got one of two, and like, you're only allowed to do that. And like, if your discipleship looks like everyone else's discipleship, then you might be running into some of those things as well. But it's not cut and dry. Don't take these as like automatic, yes, slam dunk, you're in a bad church that doesn't understand it. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to talk about these things and discuss them.
Use discernment too.
Totally. And talk to your elders. Like, if you see these things, and I mean elders, not college director, but pastor, right? Elder.
Pastor, elder.
He needs to actually have the title elder, because if you're not talking to them, if you're concerned, if you're bothered in any way, shape, or form about your church, the worst thing you could do is leave without telling anyone, or just start spreading dissension and things like. I mean, how many people are rebuked in the Bible by name, by Paul, saying don't spread dissension? I mean, like. And to not cause strife. I mean, Euodia and Syntyche, they're arguing. No, agree in the Lord. Diotrephes, he wants to be preeminent. He wants to be the one most focused on. And so don't do that. Go to your elders if you have a problem, if they're worth anything. The shepherds want to know when their sheep are hurting, when they're confused, when they're bothered, when they're worried, right? Go to your elders. Talk to them. Talk to them in person. Get to know them. If you're like, well, I don't know that I could ever do that. Well, again, try, and if you can't get a hold of any of your elders, then you have another thing that you need to wrestle with, right? And so, again, I'm not saying go to your college director, go to not
or
saying
your
go to
family director, or any,
or the children's ministry coordinator or the youth pastor, unless he actually has the title pastor and has the title elder, right? And I mean, there's synonyms, but whatever.
Yeah.
And so, and if you're at a old school Baptist church that only has deacons, then I guess talk to your senior pastor. I don't know. Not everyone's elder led, but that's a whole nother thing.
We could do an episode on that. It'd be fun.
Yeah, right? Yeah, sure. Good old polity. The presbytery. Dude, Jude, was he a presbyter or is he a church planner? So that's a whole nother episode.
Yeah, it is.
Or not Jude, Titus. What was I thinking?
I was kind of just sitting there like,
Titus. Is Titus a church planner or is he a presbyter? I don't know.
But that book that Paul wrote to him was pretty awesome.
It was.
So, but I think there's a lot of different things that when you talk about the trellis and the vine, that you can go a lot of different places. It's just the trellis exists for the vine's sake.
Totally.
And
the vine matters.
And the vine's most important thing. I mean, if there's no vine, but there's an excellent trellis.
For the vine to live.
Yeah, if there's an excellent trellis, but there's no vine, then.
And those churches exist. Believe me,
Well,
because they either don't teach what accords with sound doctrine, or they don't preach the gospel even.
Yeah.
But they have lots of really cool systems, and boy are they handling COVID well, and or boy are they doing this and that, and it's like,
are they though?
I don't know, probably not, biblically speaking. But they may have all these different things and all the bells and whistles and just the coolest thing, and they have a slide for the kids ministry and all this different stuff, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, are you getting the word? Are you growing in godliness?
Yeah.
Are you able to grow here? Because is the word being preached? So the word's not being preached, and they don't have the basics down. I mean, that is Christianity 101. That is Bible 101. Preach the word. Be ready in season and out of season. If you're not getting the word, leave.
Yeah.
I mean, really, truly, tell your elders why you're leaving.
Yeah.
Leave.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I mean, it's a whole different, a lot of different conversations can be had. How should I prepare
this is a really
trellis?
big topic.
How should this trellis be put together? Should we put together this way or that way? Should we have small groups or should we have Wednesday night service?
All the grace in the world.
Oh yeah, because it's not, and
like our church doesn't do small groups, and I people clutch their pearls when they hear that. They think, how are you ministering to people without small groups? Well, come and find out. I think 70 people.
I think our church does a really good job of that, though. Mm-hmm. I mean, but then there are other churches that that might not work for where they are, and
totally.
And so
I know a guy that I know a pastor. Their missions, instead of sending money to a missionary, they put a guy through seminary and they have him be their intern.
How dare you do that?
It's just different.
I know. Yeah. I'm just saying. Like, how dare you don't have a mission? Yeah. Don't like your missions is that instead of it's just a whole. It's all. There's freedom there. There's grace there, as long as they're
still doing missions. They're still sending out people.
But the thing is, the trellis. If there's no trellis and there's no vine, got an issue.
Yeah.
If we've got a vine going everywhere, we need some trellis in there just to help everything work better.
Because the vine's gonna have trouble growing, right?
Exactly. I mean, you can always add on more trellis as well. So
exactly. But if you only have a beautiful trellis and it is spotless and there's no vine to be seen, then that's a problem as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a lot of different things.
It's ministry, man. Just be biblical. Ephesians 4:12.
Yeah.
Equip the saints for the work of the ministry, building up the body of Christ. Mm-hmm. I mean, your job as a shepherd is to equip the saints. You're constantly, our pastor loves to put it this way, you're constantly working yourself out of a job. That's what you're trying to do. Who's your replacement? Mm-hmm. You're equipping the saints for the work of the ministry so that they can build up the body. Yeah. And that way, that's exponential growth and all that other kind of stuff. And that's just beautiful, and it's godly, and it's wonderful, and it's the fellowship of believers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's just ministry.
Ministry, man.
So, well, thank you for listening to this episode of The Word Unbound. We pray this information was helpful for you. If it was, give us a follow and a share. We'll see you next time.
See you later.